Today on CityCast Chicago, what does all this rain mean for the city? CPS has a May Day plan, and I've got library superlatives for you. It's Tuesday, April 21st. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Today's episode is sponsored by ComEd. Find rebates and discounts on energy-efficient products at ComEd.com/home savings. We've got executive producer Simone Alisea in the building with us. Simone, how was your weekend?
It was great. It was very relaxing. I did a one of those like sensory deprivation float tanks for the first time. Oh my God,
please tell me more.
I'm fully converted. It was so funny because in their marketing materials, they're like, oh, you should do it once a week. And I was like, okay, yeah, try to sell me more. And then I was like, okay, I get it. I get why you would do it like regularly. So yeah, I definitely want to go back.
Me, on the other hand, I've had a very active month so far. I have seen 3 concerts, Men I Trust, Flowetry, and then over the weekend I saw Currency at the Ramova. The Ramova is growing on me. And then I saw Sophronia at the Lyric Opera. Round of applause to Avery R. Young, the entire team behind that. They were singing on the level in which I had goosebumps for 2.5 hours. And I was crying intermittently throughout the show. And so it was a really good weekend. And then I finished it off ignoring your advice from the monthly guide. And I stood out in that line this morning, Simone, so I could get my 420 mystery box. And it was nice. It was packed to the gills with all kinds of stuff. And so, yeah, it was a good weekend. So before we get into today's show, April is huge in my community for birthdays. At least 5 of my close friends have birthdays. I close out the month with a birthday. And so, for you, what actually makes a great gift, right? When I'm shopping for my friends, when I'm thinking about their birthdays, I'm looking for things that are quality, that speaks to our friendship, our connection, that is rooted in our shared community. Most of my people was born and raised in Chicago. And then sometimes it's a little bit different, something that maybe stands out. What about for you?
I'm always looking for stuff that is local. And this is an interesting thing because I think, it could actually match that rubric pretty well. I would say it is the membership gift that we are giving away for people who become CityCast Chicago neighbors during the spring membership campaign. I mean, probably if you get this, you maybe don't want to give it away because it is really cool. And that is the Oxford pennant, which is this wool felt pennant flag that, it's like a classic kind of college pennant. It's got a picture, an illustration of the Sears Tower on it that says, I live here on purpose. It says Chicago. It's in that beautiful Chicago blue. And this is what members who join this week can expect to receive as a thank you for becoming neighbors this week. You can do it at membership.citycast.fm. And I just think it is such a perfect way to demonstrate not just like pride for CityCast, which obviously we hope you do as a listener. Like we hope you have pride for CityCast and that you care so much that you're like willing to put forth $10 a month to like help us keep going and keep us sustained. But also the pride you have as a Chicagoan in Chicago. You do live here on purpose. I certainly live here on purpose, Jacoby.
I definitely do. I looked back over those 6 years away from Chicago, and I looked back at the speeches I was doing in college and the papers I was writing and the stories I was telling my classmates. 90% of it was about Chicago, and it was a place that was calling me home. The last 10 years here looks completely different than the first 18. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for all of the people who listen. And even if you signed up to be a neighbor already, you can give the gift of CityCast Chicago to your friends, your family, by going to membership.citycast.fm/Chicago. And so if you already got your pennant, then go ahead and give it to somebody else.
And of course, the pennant's not the only thing. The pennant you're going to get if you sign up by Friday. Friday is the deadline for that. Or if you sign up after that, there's no more pennants. Is what I'm being told. So there's some urgency here. But of course, you're also going to get the stuff that all of our neighbors get. Of course, the pride of helping to sustain local news. That you can't. Can you really put a price on good feelings, Jacoby? On good vibes? Can you really?
No, I don't. No.
And it's probably worth more than $10 a month, I would say. In addition to that, you're also going to get ad-free listening. You're going to get access to a members-only podcast segment, which you'll hear today, right? That's in today's episode. You get an opportunity to submit neighborhood shout outs. You get an extra email in your inbox every week highlighting some of our favorite events going on around the city. And more. It's, all of this is about, right? The whole project of CityCast is trying to connect Chicagoans and encourage us all to be better neighbors. The membership program here at CityCast is just like that extra level, right? Because we really think that better neighbors make better cities. It's kind of what we do. And so we're always trying to find ways to increase that. So support the show, claim your pennant, get the perks. Right now, membership.citycast.fm/Chicago.
Simone, I know we've been talking a lot about the weather lately, and this is kind of where you run into the catch-22. Because I look outside my window and the trees in the front of my apartment, they are growing back faster than I've seen in the last 2 years. The tulips is out, the Cherry Blossom Festival at the end of the week, the sun is out, but the rainy April both means that our color is coming back to the city, but there's also a downside to how much rain we've seen this April. Let's kind of break it down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? We can talk about the record rain in Chicago. I mean, I think it was something like we reached, some 10 inches, which is normally what we would get during the entire month, and we had already kind of passed that by last week. And so I think we all felt it was like a thunderstorm almost every night of last week. And those storms, I think here in the city, we felt them primarily as thunderstorms. And there was I saw lots of road flooding and storm drains backed up and things like that. But out in the suburbs and sort of in other parts of Illinois, some 15 tornadoes touched down during storms by Friday. And then I think another couple. There was a lot of wind. It was a lot of destruction. I think basements are really going through it right now. If you have a garden unit or if you have a basement in your building, particularly, whether you rent or own, that flooding has been pretty we've been seeing this season after season, right? And you have basements that haven't even recovered. We're still seeing stories about those 2023 storms, Jacoby, where people are trying to clear mold out of their basements. And so seeing this again and again just makes that even worse. On top of that, you also have river flooding. That's still an issue as of Monday. Monday, we're starting to see those rivers crest. And so I think the Fox River and the Des Plaines River specifically. And so it's interesting because I think, to your point, on the one hand, I'm looking out right now and this tree that was bare last week is beautifully green now. And I'm seeing blossoms everywhere. And the rain is absolutely, bringing in this growth, but it is also destructive.
Mm-hmm. So over the last couple of years, we've talked about Illinois being in a drought. Chicago experiencing drought-like conditions. What does this rain mean for that? Does it mean that we're officially out of those weeds?
The drought in Illinois is a bit of a complicated situation. And I think for those of us in Chicago who have lived through these cycles of big rainfall, you're like, how could Illinois possibly still be in a drought? Now, in Chicago is no longer in drought conditions as a result of all this rain we have having. It has been really wet.
And what are those conditions exactly?
So there are different kinds of drought, actually. Okay. And so I was looking into this because I think when people hear drought, they're just like, oh, so it's really dry. But drought refers to not just the absence of rain, but also refers to water reserve conditions, right? Are you able to get water? It refers to just sort of, are crops at risk? Is there a risk of fires? Is there a risk of dust, right? That kind of stuff. So if you go to, there's a site, drought.gov, right? Where they monitor drought, right? And there's meteorological drought, which has to do with the dry weather patterns, but there's also ecological drought where natural ecosystems are affected by a lack of water, right? There's socioeconomic drought where that's where we're talking about water supply and demand, right? Yeah. Where can people actually get the water? So all of these things drought refers to some variation of all of these things, right? That's any one of these systems might be affected, and they're all related. But the fact of the matter is drought, when we say Illinois is in drought, it refers on some level to kind of all of these things and the way that they're interacting. So it's interesting because like this record rain that we've had in Chicago has ended drought. We were in drought conditions before this record rain, and now we are not in drought conditions. And so you might be like, cool, awesome. Like we did it. We ended the drought. But that's actually not how drought works, particularly in Illinois and the Midwest. Like Illinois and the Midwest tend to cycle through periods of intense wet season like we have now. And then we get really, really, really dry. And so, and there are still parts of central and downstate Illinois that are still seeing drought conditions. They might be abnormally dry, which is like the lowest kind of level of drought.
About 42% of Illinois is currently in abnormally dry conditions. The further south you go, it starts picking up from moderate to severe.
Yeah, and so when you look at like just even the lowest level of drought, if you're looking at kind of how meteorologists and scientists are defining that, you know, that might refer to short-term dryness. It might affect planting or growth. Fire risk is still above average, or it might describe a period like we're kind of seeing in Chicago, which is like you're coming out of drought. So there might be lingering water deficits or crops that are not fully recovered. Then if you look at long-term forecasts for Illinois, we are likely to enter a drought cycle again because drought is a massive concern here in Illinois. One of the most interesting things to me when we have extreme weather like this, and again, when we think about the relationship specifically between rain and drought, is there's this idea that like, you know, how can we be in drought if we're always flooding, right? There, I think sort of individually, internally, those things feel in conflict, but they're actually not at all. And it is, in fact, like we have a thing I saw for the first time. I'd never seen this phrase, but I was reading about drought. And in Illinois, apparently, in the same way we can have flash flooding, apparently we can also have flash droughts where all of a sudden it's just very dry, kind of unexpectedly. And I think it is sort of the way we swing between extremes, right? That is that kind of the common denominator here, rather than how dry is it and how wet is it on a given day or even in a given week.
It sounds like the city is still trying to figure out how to spend $400 million from the federal government to improve infrastructure, outdated sewers, streets. We need improved stormwater management.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on because there's stuff in the drains that, right, as we all know, we have a combined sewer system here in Chicago. It's why we reverse the direction of the river, right, to keep sewage from flowing into Lake Michigan. But of course, like if it rains really hard, it can re-reverse. That causes issues. So the sewage is a huge problem. There's also like stuff that individual neighborhoods and even individual property owners can do to reduce flooding. We've talked about the Green Alleys program, which I think has kind of gone alder by alder. You know, it's sort of a thing that you can request to basically create more porous alleys, because when you have more porous surfaces that water can soak into, like natural environments like grass, right? It means that that water isn't running into the sewer. It isn't running into the drain. Individual property owners can do that via rain gardens, rain barrels, right? And then there's like very individual actions you can take while it's actually raining. Like you'll see warnings from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of like, hey, don't run your washing machine or your dishwasher. Like don't use as much water when it's raining really hard, because that can also overwhelm the system and make flooding even worse.
In addition to that $426 million Chicago has yet to spend, Cook County has yet to spend another $200 million that they were awarded as well. And so given that all reporting is this is going to be, at least for Chicagoland, one of the most frequent natural disasters, it's only getting worse. Our infrastructure is deteriorating along the way. This feels like something that we need to increase the pressure on. I do feel like it's, and I've said this time and time again, we talk about flooding, it feels like something Chicagoans just expect to happen. And so we kind of talk about it almost the same way we talk about it being cold outside. But as we've discussed, there are major implications here. And Simone, you want to guess which neighborhoods are most impacted by this?
It's got to be West Side neighborhoods, right? Like, I think
and
it's
far South Side.
I suspect probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's so much concrete in those neighborhoods. Like, those are also neighborhoods that have less tree cover. So, I wonder, like, to what degree is it about like sewer infrastructure, and to what degree is it about just like generally, again, the more porous surfaces you have, the less rain runs into storm drains.
It's Earth Week, and many of us are thinking about how we can make a difference. And one of the easiest places to start is actually right at home. And it may come as a surprise, but ComEd is finding ways to make it easier to go green. We're talking modern heat pumps that cool your home with less energy, smart thermostats, electric clothes dryers, and induction cooktops. Whether you rent or own, you can start upgrading and start saving. It's a great way to modernize your place, lower your energy bills, and do something good for the earth all at the same time. Make your Earth Week resolution one that pays you back. Visit ComEd.com/home savings to see how easy it is. Again, that's ComEd.com/home savings. The weather is finally warming up, and maybe you like me and you dreaming about getting away, right? Maybe getting outside your comfort zone, taking a break, relaxing by some water, seeing something brand new. But what if I told you ain't gotta go quite as far as you think to accomplish all of that? That's because Illinois is literally in the middle of everything. We can get out in nature in breathtaking state parks and an epic national forest for hiking, biking, all around adventuring, or explore Illinois' small town charm, or visit some of the state historical sites like Lincoln's Crib, or maybe embark on the ideal road trip celebrating 100 years of Route 66 with giant attractions along the 300-mile route. Or maybe we just go ahead and kick back in Chicago. Finally take in the lakefront, the museums, the shows we promised ourselves we're gonna do all year and never get around to. However you're looking to get away, even if you stay at home, find just what you're looking for and a little more at enjoyillinois.com. Before we get into our next story, we're in our spring membership campaign, and we spend a lot of time talking about what you can get out of becoming a CityCast Chicago neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Chicago. But I want to go beyond that a little bit today and go beyond the perks and talk about why your membership is so important to us.
Yeah, when you become a CityCast Chicago neighbor, you are helping to secure our future here in Chicago, CityCast's future here in Chicago. To you, it's $10 a month, $100 a year. But to us, like, that is support that we really rely on. It costs money to make this show. This is our full-time job. We have equipment. We go out and do things. This comes out 5 days a week, and your support helps us to keep doing it. 90% of everything we put out is free for you in your podcast feeds, in your inboxes, online, on social media. And the other 10% is really just a thank you to the people who pay it forward. That is our members, our neighbors. They signed up at membership.citycast.fm/Chicago. And, in return, we give them an extra email with the latest events, right? A bonus segment in the podcast, invites to members only events like the one we have coming up in May with the Chicago Architecture Center. And right, they are subsidizing that 90%. And so that is why it's so important that if it is possible for you and that you find this really valuable, that you sign up, become a neighbor, membership.citycast.fm/Chicago.
This only works if enough people get behind it. And so we want to be transparent, y'all. To reach our goals, we need 145 people to join before April 24th. And I need you to be one of those 145. If you've already signed up for it, then convince somebody else to sign up to become a neighbor. And I know that number sounds like a whole lot of people, but it's really only a fraction of everybody listening to this episode right now. So if you are still on the fence after a couple weeks, a couple months, or a couple years of listening, as Simone said, we don't do our jobs for free, but we are so grateful that we're able to give this podcast and this newsletter out every day for the last 5 years without missing a beat. We don't miss no days around here. And to keep this thing going, we've built the plane. It's in the air, it's flying, and we're not going to charge you for tickets. But, to help this entire operation, go over to membership.citycast.fm/Chicago. And for $10 a month, or just take care of the whole year, one-time payment, $100, just get it out of here, right? Simone, last week we were talking about an ongoing discussion between Chicago Public Schools and the teachers union and a few members of the school board. The mayor even voiced his thoughts on this. And the topic of discussion was whether or not there should be a full school day on May 1st, aka May Day, or should students, staff members, and teachers be given the day off so that people, if they want, can go participate in local protests, volunteer efforts, whatever the case may be. As we discussed, this begs a lot of questions. If you call a school day off in the next couple of weeks, what does that mean for families? What does that mean for teachers who already had things planned alongside May Day? What does it mean for CPS to be organizing, alongside to provide this space for people to go participate in protests? And so we were wondering how they were going to come down on that. And we did get a decision.
Yeah, they reached a deal late last week, CPS and the teachers union. So here's kind of how it's going to go down. Classes, number one, are in session. So they're not canceling classes on May Day. May 1st is a Friday this year. The CPS is declaring May 1 a day of civic action. But what this means will look pretty different, school to school and even classroom to classroom, right? There's going to be kind of a lot of flexibility. One thing that CPS is doing is they're going to be providing buses, I think at 100 schools or so, for field trips for students and educators to attend a rally in Union Park in the afternoon. And so I think, again, it's described as like very similar to a field trip. So I suspect there's like a lot of, forms that maybe need to be signed or something like that. And there's going to be no retaliation against students and staff who do participate in May Day. So maybe who don't go to school to participate in, because it's not just that there's like protests and like rallies going on that day, but there is a sort of a push, to do like a national no school, no work, no buying, no consumption that day. And it's worth noting that future May Days during the work week will be teacher-directed professional development days, which is one of the things that CTU had been hoping to do here. It looks like they eventually reached a compromise here, but not, obviously we're a week out from May Day.
And we had a listener reach out to us following our conversation last week, because maybe let's just read their response.
Yeah. I can get into it because I was pretty skeptical of the idea of CPS canceling classes. And to your point, this was something like the mayor had kind of weighed in and was like, yeah, I think CPS should cancel classes. And you had the CEO, Macklin King, the CPS CEO, being like, no, I don't think we should cancel classes. There's a lot going on.
This should be a day of instruction.
And I was pretty skeptical of the idea of the school district canceling classes for the purposes of protests. I sort of, I thought it was a bit of an odd arrangement. And Colin S. emailed us and took issue with that. Didn't like the I think I might have said weird or odd. And I think made a really thoughtful point about sort of the way institutions and labor can work together. So Colin gave a specific example saying, recently in Minnesota, the leadership of My Union Actors Equity, the union for professional theater actors and stage managers, organized with theater employers in Minneapolis to shut down their doors and not require employees to work on the January 23rd day of action following the ICE murders in that city. And Colin explains that, theater workers in particular have short contracts, so maybe weren't able to use like vacation or sick days in the same way. They also have some no strike, no lockout clauses in those agreements. And so like the union is kind of in a very different position in terms of being able to protect them. And Colin goes on to say, the theaters agreed to work with us in solidarity and recognize the collective action with us. They shut down their performances as well as their administrative offices so that both the theater artists and the office staff could participate in the protests. Acting in movement together in the face of greater threats is really encouraging to me, and I'm interested to see how our tactics can grow with our changing circumstances. I really appreciate Colin for writing in on this, because I think this is really thoughtful and an interesting point about, right? When we often think of like labor, a union, and their workplace, we often think of them as inherently being in conflict, because in so many situations they are, right? Yeah. Like the reason unions exist is because they have to fight for rights. But there's nothing in the rules that says an institution can't just agree with the union, right, or help their union out or whatever. I do think this example is a bit different from the concept of a school district sort of making decisions about when it's essentially endorsing a protest action by canceling school for the purposes of allowing people to go to protest. Like, I think in this case, it's not strictly a labor issue of is this business actually doing business that day, because a school is so much more than just a business, right? It is, I think the thing I think about primarily is just like parents who otherwise wouldn't have childcare and who have to deal with what that means for their own work and like their own ability to make money. I think that's kind of what makes the school district unique. But I appreciate this email, and I think it's really interesting.
Like, yes, as ICE was here, CPS, school family, Chicago Teachers Union, everyone felt the pressure of that, and the idea that we are like that CTU and CPS are coming together and making a joint statement and a joint effort that opposes the federal government. I think there are plenty of ways, and I would hope that in the months and years to come, we will see those type of collaborative actions. And I even suggested last week that just in good faith, that participating along and canceling could be a good idea if it seemed that most people were planning to not be there. But to your point, Simone, I think logistically, I think that would potentially put a lot of strain on families. And so I think what they ultimately came up with in terms of providing transportation for those who want it, giving leeway for people to have instruction, not coming down with any punishment for people who choose to do what they want. In many ways, I do feel like that still gets at what even Colin was talking about, that sort of collaborative initiation. Again, I don't know if it being in the public was really dramatic or anything, but my hope is that
I think the mayor talking about it kind of added more fire to that story than it maybe needed per se. You know what I mean?
The fact that everyone wasn't on one accord and was speaking in the public about it, I do think that was, as always, gonna make it a little more challenging. But yeah, I think for better or worse, I think what they came up with feels like a pretty strong compromise.
Hey, executive producer Simone Alicea here. And did you know CityCast Chicago neighbors get even more of the podcast? See our team. That's me, host Jacoby Cochran, creative producers Michelle Navarro and Emmy Mack, and audience development manager Chima Okoro. We're a bunch of yappers, and neighbors get an inside look into our behind-the-scenes conversations in a special bonus segment every Tuesday. We might be trying to find out where the nearest tornado siren is, or debating if there are more pizza puffs or hot dogs in Chicago, or digging into the best way to tell a story that we're working on. So if you already love the show and you want more, become a CityCast Chicago neighbor. You can only hear these bonus segments on the ad-free feed, which you can only get by being a neighbor. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. And in addition to getting more CityCast Chicago, you're also directly supporting us so we can keep making it for you. You can join now at membership.citycast.fm/Chicago. That's membership.citycast.fm/Chicago. And neighbors, I'll see you in the bonus segment. So this week is National Public Library Week. And Jacoby, you've been embarking on this journey. We've alluded to it a couple times on the podcast, but you have embarked on this journey to visit all 81 Chicago Public Library branches before 82 opens with the Obama Center in June.
I still got a ways to go if I'm going to hit that goal.
How many have you visited so far?
I visited 43 branches. So this is my initial map.
Oh, there's a map.
that I originally got. I have a much cleaner version, but this is the dusty version that has made the trip with me across the branches. But right now, I've done about 43. I've hit the most northern branch in the city, so that's Northtown. I haven't hit the one furthest west, but the furthest west I've gone is Austin. I have hit the two furthest south, so Oakdale Gardens and Hegwish, and then a bunch in between. My big gaps right now are the southwest side and the northwest side. I've done pretty much everything along the east side of the city. I've done everything south of 87th except Mount Greenwood and Beverly. And then I got to hit the southwest side and the far northwest side, like O'Hare.
Well, so I thought it would be fun since it is library week and you're visiting all the libraries. I know you haven't done all of them yet, so this is not a complete list, but to do some library superlatives of the libraries you've visited so far. And the first one I'm going to go to, and I'm going to make you narrow it down to one per category to start.
Okay.
Because let's be real here. So I want to go with, what's your favorite building, your favorite library building?
So, Simone, I'm gonna go with the Blackstone branch. It's, I think, the one of the, if not the oldest public branches in the city. It has an addition that was put on like another part of the building, but the columns outside of it are so gorgeous. It looks like it could sit on museum campus. It's got the MSI Field Museum vibe to it. And so I could go one of the contemporary structures like Chinatown or Northtown, like these glass buildings that look like they could be part of the skyline. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Blackstone. That was my neighborhood branch for a while. It's very beautiful. And when you step inside, it has this dome that is not quite Cultural Center dome, but the dome and the paintings at the top, it blows your mind away. It's a little snug branch too.
Your next category, Jacoby, because I know you love a mural. Which branch has the best mural?
Little Village is 5, Bessie Coleman is 5, Vodak East is 5. Ooh. And those are all on the outside of the building. Some have some great murals inside, which are really, really cool. So I think Greater Grand Crossing has a 5 mural inside. They have one on the lower level that they showed me, which was really nice. But I'm gonna go with Edgewater because the Edgewater branch, the way it frames the Edgewater Library sign, the way it sits across that entire front facade, it's really beautiful. And so, yeah, that might be, there's a great one on the side of the Merlot branch as well. But yeah, I like the way it complements the building in Edgewater, unlike any of the other ones.
All right, and my last category here, and I should preface this by saying we love all of our librarians.
All of them.
We are
all of them.
Librarians are some of the most helpful people you can ever encounter in real life. But I want to know who has the most helpful staff.
Oh, most helpful staff is a really good question. The librarian who stands out the most in my memory, and it's also because I have their card right in front of me, is Valerie Carter, the branch manager at the Bessie Coleman branch. When she found out I was there, she came out, she talked to me, she reminded me how close they were to the Obama Center. I even wrote in my notes, shout out branch manager Carter. She was so lovely. And I met some good people. Legler, everybody at Legler. If we're thinking staff, I'm going to go with Legler because there were some CityCast Chicago fans in there. There was another person who walked me through the public art. And then there was another woman who walked me through the food pantry that recently opened up in Legler. And so it's a really big branch. It's one of the regional branches in Chicago. They have a lot going on. There were a lot of people moving in and out, a lot of young kids in there, a lot of elders. So the people, they took a lot of time to like help me out on a busy Thursday afternoon. And so the Legner regional branch had the most helpful staff. And then honorable mention to Greater Grand Crossing because she walked me through their garden, their community garden at their local branch, and was very sweet. And so, yeah, it's been some great visits, some really great visits thus far.
So you have what, 38 branches left if you're at 43?
I got 38 branches left to go, and minus the Galewood Montclair. So technically that one closed during the pandemic and hasn't opened back up.
Do you know what's next on your list, the next one you're going to visit?
Archer Heights.
Archer Heights.
I think my next one is Archer Heights, so that I can then work my way back home by hitting Brighton Park, Back of the Yards, and McKinley Park.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to the updates. I'm excited, and look out for some videos on our social media feeds. I think if you follow Jacoby on Instagram, you can find a couple already up.
I want to give a huge thank you to our executive producer, Simone Alicea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
And to everybody listening, I appreciate y'all making it to this part of the episode. Up next, our neighbors are getting a special members-only segment where the CityCast Chicago team brings you in some of our behind-the-scenes conversations. We're only on our second one, and I'm going to tell y'all already, they kind of hilarious. Today, that's me and Simone, plus our creative producers, Michelle Navarro and Emmy Mack. We're picking back up on the conversation we've been having on the show about Chicago closures that broke our hearts to discuss closures that are, let's just say, less heartbreaking. Somebody retired and said this was the end of it. We'd be like, all right, good for you. Good for you. But you can only get it by becoming a neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. I'm just laughing thinking about it, y'all. Before we get out of here, I want to thank and welcome our newest CityCast Chicago neighbors. Shout out to Dylan H., Emily B., Bert F., and Elizabeth O.T. Another neighbor, Heather D., told us why she became a member. Heather says, I appreciate what and how you approach talking about Chicago. I appreciate your critical reflections on the various topics, and that, of course, requires a level of honesty. Your humor, lived experiences, and discussions are wonderful. I'm here for it all. I love this city, and I think it's better because of CityCast Chicago. Thanks to each of you. Thank you, Heather, for writing that. As she points out, in addition to talking about all of these different stories, we put a lot of ourselves into this, a lot of our experiences in Chicago, a lot of our feelings, and it is a lot of work, but I know it's a joy for us. And so our hope is that it means enough for you that you are willing to give us $10 a month or $100 a year so that you can get these great perks. But remember, the pennant is only going to be here until the end of the week. Do you want to be like Heather and support local journalism? Do you want to be like Dylan, Emily, Bert, and Elizabeth and get the pennant? Then please hit us up at membership.citycast.fm. One more thing. Some good news. Tonight, if the weather permits, I'm going to get out there with Black Joyride for their kickoff ride of the season. You can meet at 6 o'clock at Ellis Park off 35th and Cottage. I usually plan a little bit of music, have a little bit before and after so you can meet some great people from across the city. We are going to be back bright and early tomorrow. Shout out to everybody making this episode, everybody listening to it. I will talk to y'all soon. Peace.